It started with a sound, a deep, trembling growl from beneath the earth. The kind of sound you don't hear, you feel, but that came later. Long before the ground opened its jaws, there was Karen. The woman who thought the land itself would bend to her will. Karen had a dream that gleamed brighter than any caution sign. She wanted a mansion, perched atop the cliffs of Redwood Valley, a place where morning sunlight painted her living room golden and the ocean waves sang her to sleep. To her, it wasn't just land, it was destiny. But destiny, as it turns out, comes with warnings. When the geologists arrived, their faces told a story her money didn't want to hear. Dr. Harris, the lead geologist, held up his soil report, tapping the paper like it was a ticking clock.
"Mrs. Davenport," he said, "this slope isn't stable.
The entire ridge is built on shifting clay. You're sitting on a geological fault line." Karen smiled, polite but firm. "Doctor, I've lived my life building things people said were impossible. My mansion will be no different." The geologists exchanged uneasy looks. They'd seen what this kind of confidence cost before. One of them muttered, "Nature doesn't negotiate." But Karen didn't believe in limitations, only solutions. She hired a different team of contractors, ones willing to nod instead of question. Her blueprints came alive. Towering glass windows, marble pillars, a cascading infinity pool hanging over the edge of the valley. To Karen, it was perfect. To the ground beneath her feet, it was pressure. As weeks passed, small signs whispered their warnings. Hairline cracks in the driveway, doors that wouldn't close, faint vibrations at night. She dismissed them all. "Settling," she said, "just settling." But Redwood Valley wasn't settling. It was shifting, slowly, patiently. And one evening, as golden light bled into twilight, Dr. Harris stood on a nearby ridge, binoculars in hand, watching Karen's mansion rise like a defiance against nature itself. His gut twisted. He turned to his assistant. "Mark my words," he said softly. "That house won't last a year." The wind carried his words down the valley, as if the earth itself was listening. Little did they know, the countdown had already begun. At first, the cracks were almost invisible, thin, innocent lines crawling along the edge of perfection. The workers assured Karen it was nothing. "The foundation's just adjusting," they said, wiping sweat from their brows as they packed up their tools. But beneath the marble floors and glass walls, the earth had begun its quiet rebellion. 6 months after the mansion's grand opening, Karen threw a lavish party to celebrate her unstoppable vision. Guests arrived in shining cars, laughter echoed across the cliffs, and champagne flowed like the ocean below. Every corner of her mansion screamed success. No one noticed the faint creak echoing beneath the floorboards. As the night deepened, a gentle tremor rippled through the ground. The chandelier above the ballroom swayed ever so slightly. One of the guests, an architect, paused mid-conversation, eyes narrowing. "Did anyone else feel that?" he asked. Karen laughed it off. "You're imagining things. Maybe too much champagne?" The crowd chuckled. The music swelled again, and the tremor was forgotten. But the earth doesn't forget. The next morning, Karen woke to a strange silence. The usual rhythm of waves and wind had changed, muted, heavy, almost expectant. When she stepped outside, she noticed a new crack stretching across her driveway, splitting the concrete like a scar. She frowned, ran her hand over it, and called her contractor. "It's normal," he said, though his voice carried hesitation. "Cliff soil moves sometimes. We'll patch it up." Patch it up. That phrase became her mantra. Every new fracture in the walls, every shifting doorframe, every distant rumble was met with the same denial. She poured money into cosmetic fixes, repainting walls, reinforcing railings, adding support beams. But no beam can silence the weight of a restless earth. By midsummer, the mansion had developed a subtle tilt. Chandeliers hung slightly off-center. Water pooled unevenly in the pool, and a faint groan hummed through the pipes late at night. Karen still refused to see it. "My house is fine," she told herself, staring out over the valley. "It's perfect." But perfection was peeling at the edges. Dr. Harris visited one last time, uninvited. Standing at her doorstep, mud clinging to his boots, he held out new survey reports. "Karen," he said quietly, "it's moving. Half an inch every month. You have to leave before it's too late." She met his eyes, steel in her voice. "I didn't build this mansion to run from it." Dr. Harris sighed, stepping back toward his truck. "Then you're not running from danger. You're waiting for it." And as his taillights disappeared down the winding road, thunder rolled across the valley like a distant growl. The night it happened, the valley was unnaturally still. No breeze, no rustle of leaves, just an eerie quiet that pressed against the windows like a held breath. The moon hung low, swollen and pale, lighting Karen's mansion in silver ghostlight. She couldn't sleep. The mansion creaked and sighed like an old ship at sea. Every groan of the walls felt heavier than the last. She poured herself a glass of wine, trying to convince herself it was nothing. Settling, she whispered again, though her voice trembled now. But deep underground, the earth was no longer settling, it was straining. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a low rumble rolled through Redwood Valley. The chandelier swayed violently this time, scattering shards of light across the marble floor. Karen's wineglass toppled, shattering at her feet. Then came a sound like thunder, except it came from below. Karen rushed to the balcony, heart pounding. What she saw froze her in place. The cliff edge, just beyond her infinity pool, was fracturing, jagged lines racing across the soil, glowing faintly as lights from the house illuminated them. Pieces of earth began to crumble into the darkness below. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, and dialed her contractor. No signal. She tried Dr. Harris. Nothing. The valley was silent again, except for the faint, rhythmic groaning of the cliff beneath her mansion. Then came the second quake, stronger, sharper, angrier. The floor buckled beneath her. Paintings crashed to the ground, glass shattered, alarms screamed. Karen stumbled through the hallway, gripping the walls as the mansion moaned like a dying beast. She reached the foyer and saw the first real horror. The marble tiles were splitting open, chunks of floor sliding downward toward the cliffside. Her dream mansion was literally tearing itself apart. Panicked, she ran outside toward her car, but the driveway was gone, split in two, one half hanging over the valley like a broken jaw. She screamed into the night, her voice swallowed by the roaring earth. And then through the chaos, headlights appeared. Dr. Harris. He'd come back. "Karen!" he shouted through the storm of debris. "Get out! The whole ridge is collapsing!" But before she could reach him, a deafening crack split the ground between them. The mansion shuddered violently, its foundation finally giving way. Karen turned back for one last look at her. Masterpiece, the glass walls, she'd once called unbreakable, before. They shattered in a final, glittering explosion. The house began to slide. She could only whisper, "No," as the earth opened beneath her dream. And then, the mansion was gone, swallowed whole by the valley that had warned her all along. Morning broke over Redwood Valley like nothing had happened. The ocean glimmered calmly beneath the cliffs. Birds sang in the distance, and sunlight brushed over the jagged scar where Karen's mansion once stood. Nature had a cruel way of erasing human arrogance, quietly, efficiently, without apology. Dr. Harris stood at the edge of what was left. His boots sank into the soft, crumbled soil, the ground still trembling faintly from the night's violence. Below, where the grand structure had once towered proudly, there was nothing but twisted metal, splintered beams, and broken glass glinting like tears in the morning light. Rescue crews combed through the debris. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors whipping dust into the air. No one spoke much. There wasn't much to say. What was once the valley's most magnificent home was now a crater, a reminder that the earth always keeps its promises. Hours passed before they found her. Karen was alive, barely. Wedged between slabs of collapsed marble. Covered in dust and blood, her eyes fluttered open as rescuers pulled her free. When they carried her to the ambulance, she didn't speak. She just stared back toward the ruins of her mansion, her dream, her downfall. Later, in a hospital room filled with the steady beep of machines, Dr. Harris sat beside her bed. Her voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "I thought I could control it," she whispered. "I thought I could build over it." Dr. Harris looked at her, not with anger, but with a weary kind of sadness. "No one controls the earth. Karen, we just live on it, borrow its peace, until it decides to take it back." She turned away, eyes glistening. "It warned me," she said softly. "I heard it. I just didn't listen." Weeks later, the story made headlines across the country. Luxury mansion collapses after ignoring. Geological reports. Experts dissected the failure. Commentators debated the arrogance of wealth versus nature. And social media turned the tragedy into a cautionary tale. But for those who lived near Redwood Valley, the story wasn't about data or drama. It was about humility. The land was fenced off now. No rebuilding, no new permits. The cliff would remain untouched. A monument to silence and stubbornness. Sometimes, on misty mornings, locals swear they can still hear faint echoes, like a deep rumble beneath the earth, reminding everyone that some warnings are not meant to be ignored. Karen never rebuilt. She moved inland, far from cliffs, far from fault lines, but every time the ground trembled, even slightly, she'd freeze. Because she knew now, the earth doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you don't listen, it makes you. Stories like this remind us. Some warnings should never be ignored. What would you have done if you were in Karen's place? Tell me in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories every week. Nature always gives warnings, It's up to us to listen.